I'll talk to you afterwards, Mr. McKay. We're live.
Good night to the Belizean people at home and abroad living in the diaspora. Tonight we have with us sitting virtually and this, our 26th edition of Belizean Affairs. We have our legal attorney, Miss Sharon Pitts. We have our educational teacher, Dr. McKay. We have Mr. Roody Wade, and also Mr. Leonard Brackett, and me, myself, Mr. Gregory Brackett. Tonight's episode, we want to educate you on things that are happening in Belize with our present government. With that said, let's take it over to Mr. Wade for our reading.
A pleasant good night to our viewers and listeners, both at home and abroad. Like you rightfully says, Greg, we welcome once again Miss Sharon Pitts and Dr. McKay, or our new vanguard of the nation. And on that note, right into it, because time is of an essence. We usually start the show with a prayer. So I'll go right into it. I'll continue Jeremiah chapter 30:1-5. Very short tonight. Okay, the word that came to Jeremiah from the Lord. Thus say the Lord, the God of Israel, write in a book all the words that I have spoken to you. For behold, days are coming, declare the Lord, when I will restore the fortune of my people, Israel and Judea, says the Lord, and I will bring them back to the land that I have gave to their father, and they shall take possession of it. These are the words that the Lord spoke concerning Israel and Judea. Thus says the Lord, we have heard a cry of panic, of terror, and no peace. That is my word for tonight. And I'll offer a short prayer for us. Divine Father, we come to you again once again on a special edition of the 26th edition of Belizean Affairs. Please, Lord God, give us the wisdom, continue to bless us, continue to give us the courage to do what we do with no fear. We take truth to the nation, and we are about people and nation. Lord God, you know that everything we say and do comes from the heart. Amen. So tonight, Lord, please bless us and guide us through this session. Thank you.
Amen, amen. Thank you, Mr. Wade. I now go to Dr. McKay. Ms. McKay, can you do your introducing yourself, please?
My name is Abigail McKay. I am a resident of Belize and sometimes the United States. I am a student of history. I'm a student. I believe that the story of our country needs to be told. It needs to be documented. It needs to be told. And we need to use every space that we can, because more and more I see that we are losing. The way the world is changing so rapidly, it is changing that we cannot delay any further. That is how I am. That is how I think. We have a lot to contribute. Everybody has their experience. And one of the things I'm committed to doing is making sure that the documentation happens. I'll tell my story I'll share as a teacher, a storyteller in terms of what I know, and I welcome learning from everybody else. Lots of contributions can be received from others if we are willing to listen.
Thank you, Dr.
Amen.
McKay. Thank you, Dr. McKay. And let's not forget, you are also hailing from the Creole Council. Let that be known and let our voices be heard. I will now go to our favorite attorney at work, defending our Constitution, Miss Sharon Pitts.
Good night, everybody. I want to say that Dr. McKay has there's an elder who is one of our leading defender of Belize, our constitution, our history, our heritage, full of wisdom. I can call his name Captain Nick Sanchez, and I think he's about around 90, early 90s young. And I think it would be remiss of me if I didn't share this with the panelists and the
Wow.
listening Belizean audience at home and abroad. Dr. Abigail McKay is also head of the Belize History Association, and I know she has been involved in cross-section of solid commitment, long-standing to Belize, people amongst various walks of life, and centrally the Creole Council too. Why I'm saying this is because one time I think she was on Jules Vasquez's show, and I didn't have the benefit of seeing the show. I didn't know, but I got a call from Canada, and Captain Nick was telling me, "Didn't you listen to Dr. Bembe? How she defended Belize and Battle of St. George's Key and our history and our heritage?" And I was Dr. Who? And he said, "Abigail, man." I was like, "What? Why did you tell me that?" No, I know I don't got no doctorate, but Bembe is a word, in our culture.
Yes,
Tenacity, and I think those things are, besides the letters formal behind her name, I think that's the
Sarah?
spirit that she comes with, and the
contribution?
genuine,
A quick contribution to what you just said.
and competence, which is a wonderful compliment. And
Sharon,
we're lucky, we're blessed,
Sharon, a small little
Yes, sir.
contribution to what you just said about Ms. Dr. McKay just now. When you use the word Bembe,
Yes.
it's the equivalent of saying someone with fortitude, strength. Okay? So those
Yes.
two words, fortitude and strength, comes
Mhm.
along with that projection of the term or word Bembe.
Mhm.
It doesn't have to be derogatory or negative.
Well, I'll tell you
It
something,
isn't.
no?
No, I'm just saying I'm
It is a
contributing that as a
name.
positive perspective,
Yes,
Go
it
ahead.
is a term. Yep. Go ahead.
I will say this, and I like sharing history too, and we learn from one another. One time I was, somebody wrote about Bembes of Belize, but I think, respectfully, they use examples of ladies, including one or two I, have regard for. But it was Mr. Emerson Gill, who I think it was one time for International Museum Day. From the Creole Museum, I was trying to put together an exhibit, and it was about water and facet and the old facet Bembe. And Mr. Gill said to me, Emerson, if you don't mind, said, "But you don't know the original Bembe was Zinga, the African warrior." And I asked my mother about the local facet Bembe, and she gave me the local history. My daughter, who is younger, I asked her to help research. It was wonderful. So if I can share quickly, Zinga was of West Africa, and she was sister to her brother, who was the king. And apparently, one he might have been a little, he needed to be bolstered up, right? And he was under siege, and the Portuguese and others, the European, blah blah blah. At a time when they were taking our people and enslaving us. So her brother sent her one time to meet with the Portuguese ambassadors, And what they did, they tried a power play, and they did not offer her a seat. And shocking as it sounds, she ordered one of her court, a male in her court, to assume the position of a stool. And she sat regally like a queen on this man's back. And she was one-on-one with the diplomat. And it is said beyond that, that her brother died, he got sick, different things. But she resisted the Portuguese enslavement of her people. And she was a warrior and a great diplomat. And with respect to the warrior part, she led her people in battle and she still lived to a very long age. She was blessed with that. So I learned a lot by, sometimes just your little Creole thing, they go to something cultural, and I didn't realize, and I was helped, and then you get the young people to help. So, we learn from one another and teach one another. So I just want to say
Exactly.
that Bembe is really something that, holds a lot in our history and culture, and it's a spirit, right? Good spirit, right? So, Doctor, I took liberty, It's Dr.
Okay.
Mackey.
No,
So
I actually own that. I think it is necessary oftentimes for you to be prepared to stand in your convictions, stand in your truth.
Exactly.
And that it does require fortitude. It does require strength.
Right.
It does require convictions. It is necessary.
Well said. Well said.
Amen.
Miss Pitts, I thank you for your warm welcoming of Dr. McKay and your introductory speech. But now you ladies want me to go get the Pocono Boy stick and
Yes,
fight for this Constitution. You
Yes,
know? But with that said, let me take it over to Mr. Brackett for his introduction, followed by Mr. Wade immediately after.
Thank you very much, Greg. My name is Leonard Brackett. I'm one of the panelists on this show, hopefully on a regular basis in the past and hopefully to remain regularly as well in the future. But tonight, I'm honored to be in the presence of these two young ladies, each of whom in their own capacity and in their own rights are individuals that I would class as patriots of our country, Belize, without any exception or any kind of holding back. To me, I feel honored to have this privilege, not only because of what they contribute to the country on an ongoing basis, but what they're going to bring tonight to this show. I'm definitely sure that our audience, our people, are going to be blessed by them and their effort to consistently come as warriors to the forefront to do battle on behalf of the well-being and safety of our country. They don't wear a pants per se, like some men would say, well, if the person is not where they come at the front of the battle, can help wage the war, no, they wear a pants, which means that they're talking machismo like, right? And say, well, women should stay in the back. I'm telling you, my regular audience, these two women are not the type of women that you'll find in the back of the battle. They will be right up front. As a matter of fact, in some instances that I'm aware of, I've known that they have been the one charging the battle or the fight. So thank you, Mr. Wade. Thank you, Greg. And thanks, Ms. McKay. And thanks, Ms. Pitts, for gracing us with your presence tonight. And having introduced myself as Leonard Brackett, I'm usually the one that's the troublemaker. But we'll leave that for right now and just turn it back over to Greg. Oh, I think
well said, Mr. Brackett.
Thank you, sir.
What more can you have when you have an educator who can educate in the right way? Mm-hmm. And you will have listeners at home and abroad, followed by a defender of the Constitution legally. Mm-hmm. I know in Ms. Pitt's way, how many clients have she defended constitutionally? What more can you ask for? With that said, Mr. Wade, let's hear your introduction so we can go straight into our program.
Well, thank you. Thank you, guys, and thank you, ladies. It's an honor to sit here with you guys.
You're welcome.
You know, I had a program laid out, but when Gregory told me that she had, you know, we're gonna have guests, and we chooses that I had choose, you know, to let the guests be heard tonight because of the magnitude and the experience you guys will be bringing to the people at home and abroad and the nation. And the thing that really gets me is that, you know, you have a lot of people talk, but they are afraid to put up, right? So now I you know, my heart, you know, goes out to you guys who's willing to put up, to show your face and express the way you feel about what's really going on in your country and what you think better could be done, right? So I applaud you guys, right? And I'm honored, like I say, I'm honored to, you know, this will go down in history for me, right? To be sitting with you guys, because I've always says, right, my hat goes off to anyone, man or woman, that could stand up and step up and be counted for, right? So tonight, you know, we have seen, I'm not going to rely on the past. Recently, we have seen the twisting, the attack on our constitution, the law, our law of our land. We see how they constantly attack it and use it as a bedcloth for their own personal agenda. We saw when they came up with the Constitution Reform Committee, right? We saw the shenanigans that this Belizean administration went through just to select people, right? To champion this constitution. We saw how that played out. And most of us who are seeing saw that it was a blatant attack on, for me, on the Creole of this country and the black people of this country. And he continued to do it over and over again, and we need to call him out, right? Mm-hmm. So, in my view, first of all, Roody Wade see nothing wrong with the Constitution. Nothing. That's something I've been living with for decades, right? That I grew up in. I saw nothing wrong with it. What they should have been trying to do, and they're going about it going all the wrong way. Trickery and lying, because they never come to the people and tell them their real agenda, why they are tricking the people. But you say the proof is in the after, the end game. We'll see the real proof. So I say this to say that there's some items that I call out that I would have seen them to want to add on to the Constitution, like elected senators instead of appointed. And I say no more on that. Pass in the Constitution that this PUP administration will have to enact UNCAC. And if they don't, the next administration that comes in must enact it. That's what I would like to see. Things that directly will benefit our people and nation, right? So on that note, I want to pass it on to our new guest, Miss McKay. I'll say no more.
Thank you. And my thoughts to this panel and the listening audience and viewing audience at home and abroad are some truths that, or some facts, let me put it that way, some facts that are established. And one of them was that Sharon Pitts made in a discourse that we had about a week ago, actually, it was last Wednesday, that had me go in a direction of reflection that facilitated, that pushed for a question to be asked. Because one of the things put on the table that is the fact is that the Constitution of Belize was a constitution that was derived from close to 1,000 years of history, historical experiences that shaped what exists as a constitution that Belize accessed in 1981. So we have a strong constitution. That's part of the fact. 1,000 years of experience, of mistakes, of fixings, of improving over time, changing over time, results in a strong constitution. And this is to say, because it's a dynamic process, it can always become stronger and stronger. So it begged the question, it helped me to raise the question of why. I couldn't find anywhere when I'm looking, why is this process being done? That's a very simple question that is the beginning effort. So when the event happened on Saturday, the question I raised at that point was, so why are we doing this again? Asking of the people who are responsible for the educational process. Why are we doing this? There's no answer to that. So I believe that that needs to be answered. It's a question that should be answered. We should not jump off into speculation and the perhaps and maybes, etc., without looking at the why. The backdrop that was used for the presentation has words that reverberate in my head. Why they reverberate? Because my mind was teased 3 or 4 days prior to raise the question of why. Why are we doing this? And when I see on a backdrop for the presentation, public presentation that was being made, a backdrop that says participate in huge letters and 3 exclamation points. But it went on to say, write, R-I-G-H-T, not W-R-I-T-E, because it already is written, but R-I-G-H-T, Y-O-U-R, your constitution. And those 2 words, write your, makes me wonder about some things. Isn't it our constitution? It's not your, because if I use that word, then it's not mine. When I say it is yours, it doesn't belong to me. So that position that is being taken where it is it belongs to somebody else, not theirs. And that then is a split in who this country is. Isn't it one? And that word right suggests, therefore, that it is wrong. If you have to write it, correct it, you know something is off balance, you're off balance, you're kilter, you have to right yourself, get upright, stand up again, balance, then it means something was off kilter. It was wrong, something was wrong about it. And that is what we have to pay attention to. When they call then on the backdrop in this forum where you put out a statement that says one thing, oh, come, it's an educational process. But the backdrop that is staring you in the face, that is becoming the subliminal piece of the conversation, that is to participate in writing a wrong constitution that belongs to you, not to me. That is what you would take away from a statement such as that. And that helped to make it, to me, even more conspicuous that we have to find out why this is being done. And there should be a simple answer to it. Something in what your silent message that is in bold and readable caps from or letters from a distance is telling me, without you mouthing and saying those words, that something is wrong with the Constitution that you have, not me, that you, somebody else's Constitution. And I mean somebody else in this country, because it's the Belize Constitution, but it's another Belize. It's not their Belize. It's not my Belize. If I use that language, write your Constitution, then I'm asking you, Mr. Brackett, Mr. Leonard Brackett, to write your Constitution, because something wrong with it. I'm asking Sharon Pitts to do something about her Constitution, because she has to write your Constitution. That, to me, is part of what we have to pay attention to. I know in law and legalese terms, words mattered. Words are saying something. And in this case, that statement alone was screaming at the top of its lungs. You know, we say when people type something in a text message in all caps, we know what that means, right? They're cussing you out.
Yeah.
We know what it means. And so when you are putting statements like these with exclamation points after exclamation points, that also says something. And if you don't want to participate in correcting the mistakes or correcting this error that we have been living with for 42 years, that's what there is being said in a statement such as that. So that's a part of the narrative, I think, or a part of the a critical thinking that we have to have. All of us, we have to question it. Why is this being done? And we have to demand that answer. So to me, the way you call for action is that everybody who engages in any conversation around anything that is going on with the Belize Constitution in these months, these weeks, these days, weeks, and months, must raise the question each and every time. Why are we doing this? And do not point me to an act of 2022 for the people, the PCC, the People's Constitution Commission, meant that something had to precede it for an act to be developed. So what preceded it? Where is that background? Where is that documentation? Where is that information? When I asked those questions in the forum, the responsible person, the coordinator of that forum, said, I can speculate, I presume, I think, but I was not given any explanation that I can pass on to you. Perhaps it's the Prime Minister who has to answer that, because he must know. So
But
then
that
the
is
question
deliberately
is,
done.
each and every one of us must ask of the Prime Minister to say, why is this process being done? Every space we are in, that question should be raised.
Okay.
Not necessarily for it to be answered by those around us, because if you don't have that response, if you don't have that answer, because I asked the person who was coordinating, I asked her specifically, is that what you have been advised? Was that information provided to you in a factual way, or is this your opinion, your thinking? And it's their thinking. Everybody is presuming and acting on the presumptions or the little bits of information that have been dropped here and there, and people run with it. And one of the things I believe in this perspective is when you pick up something like that, Sharon, in another session, gave a little bit of a story that helped to illustrate what you end up picking up when you pick up these little bits of things. And I think it is important for us to stop and think about that before we get into a debate and a discussion. Even trying to understand what the thinking is behind, trying to get into other people's heads, which we shouldn't do. We should function with what is factually in front of us. And what is factually in front of us is a statement on a big banner that was about 6 feet wide and about the same tall that says, participate, write your constitution. And another way of saying that statement is something is wrong with the constitution that you have. It's your constitution. I will stop there for a minute.
Dr.
Well,
McKay.
let's give Miss Sharon to
second that.
continue. Ladies first. Ladies first.
Can you second that? Can you second that, Miss Pitts?
Yes, one of the things that was very, very obvious and repeated from earlier in the year when I kept asking, well, what is our stance, what we're going to see from months before? And it seemed nobody could answer. And then Saturday, I raised the matter again of I repeated what I understood to have been the question Senior Counsel Lois Young raised at the same Swift Hall months before.
Sharon, were you there? Sharon, were you there?
I was
okay,
there.
okay.
And she was asking and got the response that there were commissioners who had been required to take a secret oath. And I asked, because I'm a student of Philip Golson, and he used to say when it comes to this country, the people have a right to know. And if it has to do with diplomats or politicians getting your country into trouble, be the voice of the people, disclose to them, they have a right to know. So following on the question that Abigail was asking, and she wasn't getting answers, and the questions, right? The basic question. When I raised that question again, and it led me to say as well, by way of a stance and a demand, because some little trifling thing was muttered as though, well, it was to hold them together and so on. But really and truly, that does not suffice. So I was saying that, and the person wanted my note, the diplomat who was there from government. No, my note had a lot to do with how much things we cost the market and some other things, right? But really and truly, that was like you're asking serious questions and somebody start to catch the imaginary fly on the wall or use the traction. You know, what our attention span is better than that, no? We are not picnic, even a child in preschool, when it comes to certain things and they ask them, I say, why ma? But why not teacher? They will press for an answer. So basically it was then that I was saying our stance, our position is that won't go any further unless we can know. Following on the corollary to Abigail's question was, why are we doing this? And then my follow-up in that sense was, if it has been secret, the people deserve a right to know, and before we go any further, we must have full disclosure. Another position I presented, and you have to know if it think and pivot on your feet, right? Is that a questionnaire was presented, a survey questionnaire. We were being told that this would be some presentation on the Constitution and the rule of law. You could present for
Know
the
your
next
rights or something?
20
Wasn't that the
years.
slogan? Know your rights? Hey, Sharon?
Yes.
Wasn't
So
that the
there was,
slogan? Know your rights?
as Abigail said, I think I don't know what was on the slogan, right? Because what
The
got me
slogan would be what was on the backdrop. That's the slogan.
exactly. So that was the big message, and Abigail said
Wow.
subliminal. But what I always know is that even in advertising, it's a subliminal that will get you.
Yep.
So you
Yep.
will be entrapped. And I was saying before that let us have this thing is going by way of propaganda. So if anything, we have to have proper education, good propaganda. But what you have then is when I say write a survey and a questionnaire asking certain things, I've decided on the floor to state that we're not going to sign this. I'm not going to sign it. I said it in the singular because you have to be are going through a process or being put through a process and this expose that there's some hidden agenda, there's disquiet and it's well placed and distrust because then people are being asked to complete a questionnaire survey and it has things as their name, address, or sorry, it has some things which would include like age and some other things. You might say that's benign and that's a general survey methodology. But the biggest problem is with it is you haven't even started to present and you're asking people these things which are conclusions and they will be collected and bind and fix this country. When I was looking at the banner and that popped up, and I was like, well, they're saying write your constitution, but you know, people would say if it's not broken, don't fix it. And I gave the example of the idol picnic who the grandma, granddad, the seamstress, the tailor, the cobbler that say you have something good, you unravel one part, the whole thing come loose. So what came out in me then was that protective mode. Fight for your constitution. Fight for your constitution. And then when the examples were being given, they were very unhappy examples and agendas were coming out that are not of Belize. Incidentally, I want to share this with you. One of the main attacks is against God as the head of our constitution. And you know why I say main? Because there are certain things which, with our tradition and way of life, nobody would have been there to raise or to countenance or to encourage. Those things would have been anathema to under a sudden continuing ban or curse. This evening, incidentally, but rather by
We have a feedback there, Leonard.
and I believe I was saying that when one of the things that was being said.
You got a feedback there, Leonard or Greg? Any feedback from you guys? I mean, there is in the background, yeah.
Like a windy, something windy.
Rule of law.
Let me check something. Be right back with you guys.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Which came out of it is the thing that separates us from rule by decree, that gives us our history and our tradition, and it's the best in the world. I asked Mr. Hubert Elrington because my memory served me that at the time of immersion in
I'm not hearing
basically.
Oh, okay. Like some of
She's kind of freezing up.
Huh?
And that was secret, like the 17 proposals and the Webster proposals. We have a chain of that treachery. all
Opportunity.
walks of life and
Okay.
political rankings join together and they reject those things. So what Mr. Hubert was saying was, remember, we shut the country of Belize down and we were saying we would not accept being a part of any state and other regime or country with an unfounded claim to us. The people of Belize signaled very clearly. And he said that when it came to the constitution, yes, you might have other people who were waiting in the wings, and after they felt, oh yes, you know what? This was exactly what we expected and wanted. He said in British Honduras already named Belize and physically in England, he and a gentleman who has passed on, a hero patriot, international jurist, Edward Leng Jr., were able to say to the British, who said, you know what, they were leaders saying, this is what your people wanted. He said, no, that is why your people shut down the country.
Mm-hmm.
And what they want, what we, the people of Belize, want is to remain, to get a British style Westminster constitution and to remain within the Commonwealth. And you know what he said to me? He said for at least the next 100 years, right? That, when you say that in law, an emphasis is to say, you know what? Henry Fairweather used to say, you defend this country for the next 1,000 generations. That's the timeline we see, right? I can say much, much more, but all in all,
It froze up
important
again.
in the House to change the constitution. But why they are going through this exercise, and I call it an experiment, is that they know what they want to come with. They have an agenda. They haven't showed their hands, but what they want is to line up the people, and then they will have recordings. Well, you said this there. We said this. You were to ask questions, or people have a way now. When Belizeans don't agree with you, they double, triple bank down in silence, right? And you have to listen to, you have to know how to read the temperature and that, right? So they will want to go to the people after and say, you know what, as though they are not
Lost
what
it
we
there,
want.
Sharon, a little
They
bit.
will say, you the people, you asked for it and we gave it to you. So I believe that it's something that is not in the interest of Belize or the people of Belize, the constitution of Belize. Another point I want to make, and this is by way of listening to people too, because I listen to people. I speak, but like William the Silent, he he got that moniker because he was an excellent listener. And this brings to mind to something that I want to say quickly. One, with respect to the Constitution, it is a duty and right of every citizen to defend the Constitution of Belize. Public trust doctrine, John Locke, theorist, but that's what we do by way of navel string and, you know, being salt of the earth Belizeans, right? So we have that highest learning. No university could limit you. That intuition. Then when I mentioned William the Silent just now, I read every year, especially September, some of the old patriotic writings, and you had a bicentenary brochure, which we published something from like 1898 when you had that public meeting celebrating 10th of September, the battle, the victory, and so on, which won our country for us. You know, you had somebody republish. I can't say it word for word verbatim, but I'll tell the story, right? That 3 international diplomats were discussing, and you had the Spaniard, you had the French, and you had the British, and they were saying and arguing about the benefits and the virtues and the bestness and the worstness of each of the other system, but really the virtues. And one was boasting about the rights of man, and one was boasting about something else. And the other two, the French and the Spaniard, capitulated and agreed when William picked, William the Silent said, and his example was, and I'll use it, right? And this, to my mind, I never get this in a law school. I get all sorts of things about rule of law, constitutional democracy, but this one I read in some Belize republished writing. He said that take the lowliest coal miner. You know that man will go down underground, suited up, life nasty, brutus and short, but they work hard, the workman, right? He said, take his humble tin roof hut or cottage. We that say, take Willie, my house and my castle, my dog sit down at my castle, right? Though this rain and the sleet and the snow may enter through that roof that a part is missing. Not one of the king's horses, not one of the king's men, and not even the king himself can enter without the permission of that coal miner, that homeowner. That, he said, is the rule of law. And I have coal seats. Another example I could give, back one time you had trial by testing, right? If you were suspected of being a witch or whatever the male is for a witch, they would take you before some people. And you know what was the question put to you in the Inquisition? It was really and truly trial by testing meant beyond certain things said, well, it is said of you that you're guilty of this. They throw you in at the sea or the water. And if you manage to swim and never sink, you know, Creole that say you go down one time, you come up, you go down, second time you bubble up, third time you drown, that hinder, you kick the bucket. If you survived and floated and came back on land, they burnt you at the stake because that proved your guilt. If you're drowning, that proved your innocence, right? Then you had the chancellor and, you know, the measurement who would be, you know, having court, and it would vary and so on. So the Constitution of England, which the Commonwealth basically has to the largest extent, the Westminster system, the rule of law, the common law system as opposed to the civil law system that we see in Central America. That is what allowed us to escape rule by decree, revolutions, and so on. So basically, the Constitution of England, you won't find in anyone's treatise or book. It is said to be strongest for the paper it is not written on. But you know what upholds the Constitution? There are certain conventions and the spirit of the people and how they protect and defend the Constitution. And you see, when our preamble starts with, it requires policies of state, and then it lists the policies of state. So then you have secondary laws or rules of law, which are enactments and statutes in the written Constitution places, following on our history of parliamentary democracy and so on, and separation of powers. You have then that you can have legislation, but even if the Constitution says that by a 3/4 majority, Parliament could change the Constitution, then officials and government people, members of the Parliament, well know in the legislature. They then change the Constitution without suspect the people's wrath and opposition. And somebody said Belizeans go horizontal, you know, till they get vertical.
Sharon,
By the grace of God, we are constrained by the love of God and the very constitution which protects us from the tyranny of the majority. Because sometimes politicians feel you give them this extraordinary or special majority for their use as stick for broke the back and the will of the people. Not so.
Sharon, I just want to quote something here that has to do with the point that you're raising about our constitution.
Basic structure, doctrine of the constitution, and there are many ways that has been explained, but
Let her finish up, Leonard, and then you go ahead, Leonard.
I want to be able to come in on the point that she's presently driving home. I don't want to segue into something else, because this point is very relevant to what is it.
Right.
I want to present. So I don't want to stray away from that or go into another point or change the focus.
Go ahead. Okay, go ahead. Yeah.
Sorry, and we are saying strengthen the constitution, galvanize it, the entrenched provisions, and by extension, what the constitution expects and allows the people to do. Strengthen the sovereignty. The constitution describes Belize, sovereign country. Strengthen and look after our equality against racial discrimination. We have laws imported from abroad, an agenda which now try have separate. Anyway, I won't go on. I don't want to get into the details. Let me hold my listen respectfully.
Just now I was talking, so I got to read that and I just got it back. So I'll proceed on that.
While you're doing that, Mr. Brackett.
No, I'm ready. I'm ready to roll.
You are ready? Go ahead.
What happened is that the so-called education, the present committee.
We just have a little disturbance there, and it's getting. I don't know where it's coming from, but like maybe.
For a while, and we gotta just stop moving forward. We gotta just persist and try the best we can. So-called education that these people are doing has a lot of flaws into it. But I want to flag one particular one that is critical.
May I interrupt you for just a minute? Just a second?
Yes.
And
go
suggest
ahead,
that those who are not speaking, if they just mute their mic, because that might help to make it clearer.
Right.
So those who are not presenting to just mute their mic.
Okay. Can I proceed then? Everybody? Okay. We have people going around supposedly doing what they call an educational campaign on behalf of the PCC. And what's being taught as an educational campaign is actually a miseducational campaign for all intents and purposes. I want to make some presentation here, and okay, first of all, I'm going to be citing some information from a particular case in the Supreme Court of Belize, AD 2012, claims number 579 of 2011 by the British Caribbean Bank Limited as one of the clients against the Attorney General of Belize, first defendant, and the Minister of Public Utilities as second defendant. There was also another adjoining claim that was heard within the same context and timing, claim number 646 of 2011, on behalf of Dean Boyce as trustees of the BTL Employees Trust as claimants, and against the Attorney General of Belize and the Ministry of Public Utility as defendants. The matter was heard on the first instance on March 13th, on March 14th, as well as 11th of June of 2012. Mr. Eamon Courtney, Senior Counsel, and Mrs. Ashanti Authors Marine Martins, I'm sorry, for the claimants in claim number 597 of 2011. Lord Peter Goldsmith, QC, Queen's Counsel, and Mrs. Magali Marine Young for the claimant in claim number 646 of 2011. Mr. Dennis Barrow, Senior Counsel, Mr. Nigel Hawk, and Ms. Eliane Swift for the defendant in both claims. And the judge was Justice Leal. I want to continue by stipulating here some additional information that goes along with what I just read. What I read there was just the proponents and the judge that heard the case and what the case was supposed to be about. We're talking about the basic structure doctrine of the Belize Constitution. Our system of government, whether a parliamentary democracy or a republic, must adhere to the preamble of the Belize Constitution and the court ruling. And we have a case that I just cited, and in that case, there were some conclusions made by the judge. By the way, for general information, that case went to Supreme Court, it went to the appellate court, and it went to the final jurisdiction of our court at the Caribbean Court of Justice. So in the legal environment or the legal surroundings, you'd call such a case a stare decisis case, a case that has gone through the full length and breadth of all levels of our constitutional and court environment. In other words, it's a settled law. Most Belizean lawyers will understand what a settled law is. At page number 78, by the way, the judge's ruling on the whole case involved 80 pages of documentation, not all of which we are going to cover here tonight, because that's not possible. So I took the liberty of extracting some various sections from that particular case to bolster my perspective and what I'm pointing out that the present commission is doing wrong by miseducating the people when they are claiming that they're out there supposedly doing an education campaign. So on page 78, there are some declarations. One of those declarations goes directly to my point of contention. Declaration number 4. A declaration is granted, said the judge, that section 2 of the Constitution, part 2, not part 2, subsection 2. So we're dealing with section 2, subsection 2, and section 69, subsection 9, and section 45, subsection 1 and 2 of the Constitution as intended by the Belizean Constitution 8th Amendment at 2011 are contrary to the separation of powers doctrine and the basic structure doctrine of the Constitution, and are unlawful, null, and void. Section 45(3) is declared as meaningless. Well, this is, like I said, coming down from the 3 highest courts of our land, declaring that for all intents and purposes, what the government tried to do in 2011, when they attempted to change the Constitution or modify the Constitution and include it in the Constitution so that they could get other power, they could grab other powers onto themselves, they made some modifications, and the court is now ruling and pointing out that those modifications were a travesty, a violation of the Constitution, and a violation of the powers, separation of powers doctrine, as well as the basic structure doctrine. I went on to pick out another item, number 50, item number 45, which was found on page number 50, 45B, which states the basic structure doctrine of the Belize Constitution intimates or holds that the fundamental principles of the preamble of the Belize Constitution has to be preserved for all times to come, and that they cannot be amended out of existence, even though a reasonable abridgment of fundamental rights could be affected for the public safety or public order, as fundamental rights provisions of the Constitution of Belize recognize. There is, though, a limitation on the power of amendments by implication by the words of the preamble, and therefore every provision of the Constitution is open.
Forgive me, Mr. Brackett. I would want to ask that you please, I don't know if it's your internet, but mine was going off, and I think that
Sharon, could you
start again at the 45, the basic structure doctrine, because I think it's so important.
Okay, you're breaking up a little bit, but I think I get the sense of what you're saying, and I'll just step back for a second and
it's important that you get that clear.
But we just don't walk through it, and it needs to be emphasized, because I'm going to come back to it when I mention about what is it that Mr. Usher is deliberately doing, because it's not the first time at last Saturday meeting that he did it. He did it at Orange Walk meeting, and he did it before at other meetings. And for that matter of fact, and he's emphasizing it so strongly to the point where people are being led to believe that because he is supposed to be somebody of substance, is advocating that erroneous perspective, then he must be correct. And he needs to be corrected by the laws of the land, the established case laws, as well as the Constitution itself. And someone needs to speak on those matters and get him to correct the errors of his ways. Okay, I'll go back to page number 50 of the ruling, and I'll speak on item number 45, small d, which says the basic structure doctrine of the Belize Constitution.
May I ask for a moment before you continue, Mr. Brackett?
Yes.
Because you challenged, as you concluded that first part of your discourse, you made a challenge, and I want to say that if miseducation is happening in that realm with Mr. Ed Usher, with what he's doing, you are just doing the reverse of what must be done. You are in fact the someone who's doing something about it. So this information that is on record, that is going to be archived, that people can hear, and you gave Constitution, section, case law, and other things to support your position. That is the education process. That is the work that needs to be done. And I thank you for doing that. And I ask that you recognize you are the someone, that you are the someone.
Well,
I just wanted that to be said at this point as you continue on.
Thank you for your kind words, but I'm not the only one on this panel that deals with this matter. My cousin, Mr. Gregory Brackett, this is our 26th show, and prior to this particular platform, we were on other platforms advocating the very same thing of properly educating the people in terms of our constitutional rights and taking the government to task for their shortcomings, failures, and or whether it's deliberate or just an oversight on their part. We cannot sit by and just have these guys running roughshod over us and play games with our country and our patrimony. We won't stand
You
by,
know,
stand by and watch
when
that
I
happen.
said when I say you are the someone, pay attention to what I said. I did not say
I
you
heard
are
you.
the only one.
No. I heard you though.
I said you are the someone. So I think we have to be able, all of us are the someones. Every time we step up and we speak, I am the change that I want to see. Isn't that what
Amen.
it's about? And so
Listen,
you are the
Amen.
someone in this case. And we
okay.
all
Amen.
are. I didn't say the only one. I said the someone.
Amen to
Thank
that.
you. God bless. Thank you for your kind words. Like I
Thank
said.
you. Thank you.
Uh, okay. Let's proceed.
Go ahead, Leonard.
Page number 78. Blah, 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 blah. Okay. I need to go over this particular piece here right now, though. This case laws conclusions, which were actually the conclusions in this particular case. The conclusion that Justice Legal had arrived at in those 80 pages. Like I said, I took the liberty of not having to read all 80 pages because it's not realistic. In the beginning of this particular platform, when we started, we had what you call the Friday night constitutional nights. And every Friday, we take up parts of this case and we teach it and explain it to people or to the public. So those are on record as well. But for tonight, I particularly wanted to hit the ground running in terms of trying to get this information over to Mr. Ed Usher, hoping that he will see the errors of his ways, or if it's just a genuine mistake on his part, or maybe he was not aware of it before, then he can remedy the situation easily. But I personally don't think that it's just a mistake on his part, because he cited the very change that I was citing that the borough administration did in 2011. He quoted it when he was there at the last meeting that you, Ms. McKay, was there, Sharon was there, Greg was there. I heard it on the airwaves as well. And it was not the first time that he made that error. He's consistently pushing that as an agenda. And I resent the fact that he's pretending to know what he's supposed to be teaching and miseducating people. So
It's an agenda.
let me proceed forward. Yeah, because there's more to come and a lot heavier stuff. I want the Constitution to speak for itself. So that's why I'm going along with this process here. Page number 78, declaration number 4. A declaration is granted by the authority of the Judge Legal, that section 2, subsection 2, which was added in there by the borough administration as a power grab process, is being ruled and was ruled as unconstitutional, null and void, and should have been extracted from the Constitution, when in fact Mr. Ed Usher opened up the Constitution in last Saturday's meeting and start reading from the same section and acknowledging that that matter was dealt with on the 11th, 2011 was inserted in there, and still pretend not to recognize the fact that, of course, maybe he's not a real lawyer, and therefore maybe he doesn't know about the laws, and nobody has researched it for him. But we are trying to provide that information here and move forward. Something to be done to stop miseducating people. That's our agenda or our effort. So section 2, subsection 2, and section 69, subsection 9, as well as section 145, subsection 1, as well as 2 of the Constitution, as inserted by the Belize Constitution 8th Amendment, which was done under the borough administration, like I previously intimated, at 2011, are contrary to the separation of powers doctrine, because it was a power grab, like I said, and also it's contrary to the basic structure doctrine of the Constitution, and are unlawful, the judge said, null and void, as the Constitution would require them to be declared, that any other law that is inconsistent with the Constitution, that part of the law is deemed as null and void. Even if they had 100% of the legislative members from both parties join up together and make an unconstitutional law, the law is still unconstitutional. Bottom line, no two ways about it. Page 50, item number 45B, the basic structure doctrine of the Belize Constitution. The basic structure doctrine holds that the fundamental principle of the preamble of the Belize Constitution has to be preserved for all time to come, and that they cannot be amended out of existence, even though a reasonable abridgment of some fundamental rights could be affected under only specific circumstances, not willy-nilly or arbitrarily and capriciously, for the public safety or public order, as fundamental rights provide provisions of the Constitution of Belize recognizes. There is, though, a limitation on the powers of amendments by implication by the words of the preamble, and therefore every provisions of the Constitution is open to amendment, provided the foundation or basic structure of the Constitution is not removed or damaged or destroyed. The basic structure includes the judiciary, the legislature, the rule of law, judicial review, separation of powers, and maintaining the balance and harmony of the provisions of the Constitution, all of which are protected and safeguarded by the preamble, as well as empowered by the preamble, because without the preamble, none of the citation would have been possible or accepted or wouldn't have the power of law. I therefore rule, said the judge in this particular case, that even though provisions of the Constitution can be amended, the National Assembly is not legally authorized to make any amendment or just about any and every amendment to the Constitution that would remove or destroy any of the basic structure of the Constitution of Belize. Page 53, item 49 went on to say, as I see it, the judge said, Glen Rock, which is a particular case referred to, teaches us that the fundamental right in a constitution are inherent and cannot be extinguished by a constitutional or statutory provision, which is to say, as me and my cousin always says on this show, that statutory instruments or procedures or practices cannot trump the Constitution. No care how many SIs they create, no care how much of them are behind any particular SIs. Even if that SI gets assented by the Governor General or Deputy Governor General, as in the case of this present bogus SI that they have out there, the bottom line, constitutional determination is made by the court. So they can feign and play games and do all that they want and pretend that they have a legitimate SI. And even at that, the SI does not have any transgression parts that shows what you can transgress in order to violate that particular SI, which unto its face then is incomplete, inconsistent with what the law requires. Besides that, declaring an SI just because you have the ability to declare one without justification unto itself is an abuse of power. And then you use that SI to abuse your citizens. That again is another abuse of power under the color of law. I'll go on to say, and any law that abrogates or extinguishes such rights would be violative of basic structure. And it went on to, I have a little extra part here that I really want to touch on. The National Assembly, oh no, I don't want to read that one. Caray. Oh, okay, here it is. Yeah, I had it covered up. Please bear with me. I'm sorry about the delay and the loss of time. It says at page number 53, item number 50, the submission that the National Assembly of Belize can, subject to the limitations contained in section 69, subsection 2 and subsection 3, as well as subsection 4 of the Constitution, make any amendment to the Constitution seems as shown above, to ignore the intentions of the framers or makers of the Constitution as propounded in its preamble. So basically, when Mr. Osha is going to get up there in his presentation and says to the general public, as part of his miseducation campaign effort, that the government is empowered under section 69 and also section 2, subsection 2, which was the addition, which did not exist there before the Barrow administration put it in there, and that the court ruled that it should be taken out because it is null and void and contrary to the Constitution and a violation. He gonna turn and open up the Constitution and read the very same thing that he was not supposed to contemplate in using as an information part of the Constitution to the public. The fact that he have a hard copy and that they had a revision of the Constitution a couple of years at the most, I think it was 2021 if I'm not mistaken, when that same issue should have been corrected and dealt with. In other words, when that 2011 superpower grab to take over the powers from the Constitution and to give that power to the legislator. In other words, they wanted to make the legislator the supreme powers of the land, rather than the Constitution itself as being the supreme power of the land, and the Constitution which restricts them from being able to derogate certain rights that are empowered under the preamble, and that they can only get authority to deal with if they come to the public by virtue of a plebiscite or a referendum. They want to arbitrarily and capriciously use the legislative powers to just take those rights onto themselves and do what they want with it, when the Constitution prescribes exactly how it's supposed to be done in order for them to get it. So now they want to claim that they have the power to make just about any and every law that they want, and that Mr. Barrow says in his modification of section 69, he added some additional subsections there to say that the court cannot have a judicial review on any of those matters because it should be out of the purview of the court. When, according to the separation of powers doctrine, we have the legislators, we have the administrators, right? And then we also have the judiciary, each of those three sections of government have its own authority and powers vested in it by virtue of the same Constitution. And the legislators can't abolish the court or say, okay, well, you are making a law saying that the court does not exist anymore, or that they have no power to interpret the law anymore. That would be arbitrary and capricious and a violation of the Constitution, and a law that could and should be ruled as void, because that's what the Constitution, any other law, what the Constitution is speaking about, any other law other than the Constitution, any other amendment that the Pope tries to make, or any other instruments that they try to make, you know, they have to do it based on the Constitution. They cannot arbitrarily and capriciously decide they will do what they want and deal with the Constitution. It doesn't work like that. So I'm going to use the floor for, you know. So
go ahead, Greg. Go ahead, Greg. Your turn.
I thank all of you for the information you all are putting in.
Might just be helpful for me to say, uh, with respect to your
Uh, like this
John,
prisoner,
again, I'm
they're not
Sharon.
getting the whole thing. Uh, I wonder if she might have to go in and log off and log in back again because she's gone. Greg, could you go ahead maybe then and let me see if I
Go
will get
ahead,
her to
Greg.
log back in? Let me see if I will get her to log back in.
You know, Dr. McKay, we all was in that meeting. And as I said then, and I will say it now, when I asked Mr. Usher about the basic structure, he had a problem because I knew when he was speaking about the amendment of the Constitution, he was speaking about that same section my cousin was speaking about. And it is because of the former Prime Minister mistake that these ones that presently our government has this power hungry method. And this is why I said to you guys last night in the meeting, they are trying to teach the public about their fundamental right, which is
You're
enshrined
back,
in the
Sharon.
Constitution.
Let Sharon continue there, Greg. Just a minute there, Greg. Hold on. Go continue there, Sharon. You're back. Go ahead.
One
Continue on
minute,
what you was.
1 minute.
Okay.
I just wanted to say quickly, right?
Uh-huh.
Just so people understand the backdrop of how much this constitution protects itself, protects the country. We have the built-in mechanism for its own survival, right? It
Mm-hmm.
protects itself against the people too, you know. I will say why. The case that Mr. Brackett mentioned, the main one, right? It was really around the government trying to take back for the people the assets and recover those things which would be of our telecommunications. And they passed law, did certain things, and then when the court knocked down, you know, the law, we have a right to protection from unlawful deprivation of property. So you should be compensated. It must be market rate, and cases show too that you should have prior notice, right? So then I think in 1 day or two, the administration went to amending the law and putting that to say, well, you know what? We can even change the constitution in this respect in order to, and it was saying, well, we're well meaningful, we're gaining back these national assets for the people of and country of Belize. The problem though is that you still have the rule of law with the courts and due process, and the constitution with the separation of powers
Mm-hmm.
is a document of permanence, it's self-preserving. What if government was to have a super majority and get the people in referendum to vote and say, give what the whole of Belize? No, 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 the constitution defines the state. What if they were to go like those people who rule by decree and say, we are tear up this constitution and no more constitutional law, but we have become whatever. So it protects you against the tyranny of the majority. Another thing is that, and the matter of if the people were to go into a referendum, right? You know what it does when you have that preamble, right? And out of this very case, you see other cases in point, right? And this was Supreme Court, and the higher court didn't upturn this portion. I think the government really yielded to it. India had taken the lead long ago with respect to this matter, and I think it is attributed to them that basic trust doctrine. No, with England, I don't think I have to go to court for something like that. No, they would never even think to do that, unwritten as it is. So what you have then is, take one of the examples. There was a case out of one of the African countries where They passed something to say, well, you know what, this man who parents were such and such, they pass it retroactive to say, you know what, he can't be a citizen and something, something, something. Now, interestingly enough, what protected him, one person who might complain, right, is that fundamental Bill of Rights, which is entrenched in the preamble of the Constitution and the policies of state, and then some constitutions go on to recite 1:1, right? So you see that part, we have freedom from discrimination, racial discrimination. Saturday, what was given as an example? And ironically,
Miss
people
McKay.
went into court, sponsored from abroad, to get our court to say, yes, so and so. And from Mr. Usher's presentation, all the examples he was using was hurting us as a country, flagrantly, it's flying in face of the Constitution, right? And with respect to that, with the Mayan and so on, right? Really and truly, that is discriminatory against, and if they say indigenous people, against the rest of Belizeans. And that's why I advise from the word go, we have to say that one, what we know and what Arwe said in the court case, Dr. Arwe, the expert,
Guys, Miss McKay say once you're not on talking, just make we turn off the
we
mic,
are
right?
willing to say that,
So we get
what,
that, yeah.
we love and uphold freedom from racial discrimination, but then we have the other thing of one Belizean identity. So make we protect that. The other thing was that the example given for about, we were being given examples, what? The government could change the law, the lawmakers could change, and that's your limitation on your fundamental constitutional rights and freedoms.
That's not
So
possible,
that's why the council could pass law and go sell your property if you not pay a tax. Has anybody challenged that to say, what? One, the policies of state would not countenance and the Constitution unlawful deprivation of property. There should be a court hearing. You cannot just administratively, arbitrarily do that. And then you look to your people and other means and ways to not deprive them of property. And other examples were given. And I just want to say this quick. You see, Mr. Brackett and Mr. Brackett, you all have been looking at this basic trust doctrine, right? I didn't go there prepared and set up with Mr. Greg to deal with basic trust. But just by the grace of God, I said, what? Let the churchman go before me. Let Mr. Brackett go before me. And I'm there listening and then when Mr. Gil Emerson come up, when they look for it, or in the middle of my presentation, you know what he said? Mention or ask that if they would be trying to use the Section 69 of the Constitution, bastardize it, right? You know what I was saying that Mr. Golson said, and as a blind man, when you navigate the subway in New York, you have to know what question, and I say it in a Creole with the pronunciation, you know what question to ask. Wasn't that providence bringing us together? We never sit down in a one room, collude like politicians. We came together as Belizeans, and each of us with the fear of God in a way. I tell people, you have to humble before the Constitution, protect the Constitution when it's under assault. We don't understand where it come from. But look at this, how I could sit quietly while Mr. Brackett and Mr. Brackett, I could feel safe. And this is the thing, that you have people who have the love and loyalty for Belize and the rest of the people to be able to present these things. And there it is. So when the government was introducing that section, and I will say this, if everybody in a referendum go vote after any government were to change, any one citizen could go to court and say, you know what? You can't lose the jurisdiction of the courts. You shouldn't have racial discrimination. There are certain fundamental rights and freedom. We're a rule of law country, that the Constitution protects itself, the country, and the people from destruction. Thanks. So I just wanted to emphasize, no, I know say Mr. Brackett never emphasized, but just to try bring it in a way that to bring it home so that people see, no, the Constitution as a living, self-preserving document, right? Meant to
Amen.
preserve our
Amen to that.
fundamental rights and
Amen to that. Thank you. Go ahead, Greg.
right?
Yeah, go ahead, Greg.
I thank you, Ms. Pitts, for that, because I believe our fundamental rights, which is enshrined in the Constitution, is also protected by the Referendum Act. And this is why the government, who is trying to do this constitution reform, is trying to talk about educating the people and the fundamental rights. But they are not teaching them the basic structure doctrine to let them understand the power of the Belizean Constitution in a whole, how that protects your right, Section 3 through 19, and if they violate it, you have Section 20 through judicial review. And if they violate our rights, our Constitution right, then we can go to a referendum and tell them, look, I don't think you want to go there, because we will have a referendum to let you understand. They have did this under national security, where they should have a referendum before they brought in the terrorists. And these are the things we have to teach and let our people know when the government is violating our rights. Anything that has to do with Guatemala, anything that has to do with national security, and when they fool around with our Constitution, which is our fundamental rights, that's why they are saying the people will decide in a referendum. But you don't have to try to teach these rights. These rights have been there from 1981 to present. And if you want to really do a reform, you should start with moving over Section 1 and Section 2 and strengthen it. And then we can deal with the other parts of the Constitution where it comes to the separation of powers and you making laws. We can do this. Strengthen it. Not try to violate the rights of the people. We already know most people, like 98%, don't read the Constitution. And these town hall meetings and teaching the fundamental rights, I was even more upset with the pamphlet for the survey in Section 12, where the question was asked, would you like to get rid of the Governor Gen and elect a president? I knew exactly where they were going with that.
That's the agenda right there, guys.
I am also upset with that pamphlet, and I want it to be heard, and I want the people at home and abroad to understand that survey pamphlet, they're giving you pencils, and you will sign your name, and they can erase those pencil marks, and they can input whatever they want to input to say
the teacher laugh for
your signature.
I said the teacher laugh for that, Miss McKay. That's true, no?
Careful of that. And I am serious. If you're willing to take part in that survey, use a pen, not a pencil, because once you sign there, they can alter it. And that is on the real. Mr. Wade, let me hear from you.
Well, No, I'll yield to Miss McKay.
Quickly,
I'll yield to Miss
can I
McKay.
just make a statement? Can I just make a
Make
statement?
it quick there. Make it quick there, Leonard.
You
Let me
just
say one other
mentioned
thing, and we notice not my way of making
Whoever
sure
not
it's
on, just lower your mic. I mean, take off your mic. Whoever not on, right?
oh,
yeah.
sorry.
Um,
Can I just
okay.
1 minute? The
Uh,
other thing that I've been saying is that the elephant in the room, right? And a citizen out there saw me one day and said, and I said, look at the wisdom of that. We have to be cognizant, right? That they have two parallel things that happen, right? And ironically, when one politician they say, well, Belizean identity, so that's why if I change the constitution, the very thing that will hold us together is our Belizean identity in the sense of not compartmentalized with people by way of ethnicity and balkanized where and they meet with one set, this one and that set. You don't know what is being said and it's secret and it's hush hush, right? And then they want cut and paste and say, well, you may input this, you may input that. We have an unfounded claim. We have an international case ongoing in the ICJ, and their politician, both the UDP and the PUP, joined ranks, heard the people, lined up the people, frightened the people. They go and say, yes, we want, in my view, go to the ICJ and surrender the sovereignty and they not even limit what it is. So basically, it is that they can redefine Belize, they can make a binding decision because it's non-appealable against Belize. So the point is that why go through a constitutional exercise and continue to unravel while you have this? And listen to me carefully. Existential threat hanging over the people and country's sovereignty and nation of Belize. And this reminded me of the other thing that Hubert Elrington said earlier today. And I think I was sharing it with some last night when we were in a couple hours meeting, that the other part is this defense guarantee that was demanded of the British and that they gave at the UN for an appropriate period of time post-independence. So you might say the British say that done gone and move the troops, but remaining under the Commonwealth with the British. And I've seen where a Hansard report was dropped to me, and the thing was said in the, what you call it, when they put it in as though a question but a comment, do not, and it was that enemy regime, beginning with G, have it absolutely clear that any invasion of Belize, formerly British Honduras, would immediately be responded to by the Commonwealth led by the British. So even if some people think it's notional, we have to call in that defense guarantee. The other things I say, my brothers and sisters, family and friends, compatriots who reside in the US, why don't our politicians understand and our diplomats? When you speak with people, we have the friendly North United States of Mexico, further friendly or home away from home United States of America. Don't we have the church in Boston Harbor where in 1723, and this is where your history help you and compel you? Speak for your people. Call in your history. 1723, and it was Emory King who came here who used to write and republish the history. Voted the people in the Bay, mahogany and logwood or export to assist the effort on the eastern seaboard. And the church, that is why the church, I think it's the Old North Church in Boston, has a pew reserved. You can Google it for gentlemen of the Bay. And we not play that, when they say gentlemen in this modern day, people of the Bay. So that they even say the old Ironsides SS Constitution that it's famous for going to 38 or so skirmishes. They said that the cannons from the British ship used to bounce off
So the legend was that it was made of iron, but some people say it's a wood, log wood, mahogany, right from, I don't know, from our country too. But definitely the historical record is there that we supported that effort, and that church is the same one Paul Revere or his black householder rang the bell to warn. So thanks for your patience with that. No, but I'm just saying how we don't have to pick fight. We could say, no, what, remember this. I have cold seeds right now. This is our history, our heritage coming, right?
I mean, just want to add to
Let's
what
go ahead.
Greg made. You know, when I was asking for the lease statement, is that not only are they giving people pencil to fill out these questionnaires, no, because I saw the one that you sent, Greg. If they were honest, at least to the minimum possible, they should have given those people pens, so that those people could feel comfortable knowing that they put it in pen, and it's harder to get rid of. But even if they had put it in pen, when they aggregate the information off of those sheets, those surveys, they don't have to log into their computer under each of those categories all the different things or numbers of people that really are interested in that particular issue or item, because they have their own agenda of things that they're searching for and are hoping that people will gravitate towards and vote for. So in their analysis and aggregation of the information, all kind of schemes could be played out that we, the people out here, would not be privy to or know anything about. When the nefarious people want to do wrong things, they have all different kind of means and methods to get them done. But at a minimum, the least they could have done is give them people the assurance that when they do the survey in an ink and not pencil. Simple as that. That's all I was trying to say to add on to what
Yes,
Gregory was
yes.
saying. You know?
Yes. Go ahead, Miss McKay. Go ahead. I yield the floor to you.
Thank you.
Okay.
And I want to build on what Sharon was saying just now about history, culture, and heritage. And what is important to pay attention to is our history, culture, and heritage. Because however this country was first engaged, the settlement, this camp for pirates, however it was first engaged, it evolved and became a settlement, a colony. We moved towards a country, a nation,
In the 15
self-government, etc.
in the 1530s, those pirates was around going to Belize. In the 1530s.
My position, yes, and thank you for adding that for the archival records. But what is the point I'm making is we speak English and we talk Creole, forget we pine cross better because that's the way we're comfortable with. But all of that evolved out of the English colonization, the English enslavement, the British enslavement, all of it evolved out of that experience for us. And that's why we have a belief as we do. That's why we are the only English speaking country in Central America that has a backdrop and a context to it. And to me, that is part of the element of what we have to talk about. Our country was not even wanted if you read the historical facts. If this was the haven for not democracy at the time, but for the pilfering of the gold and other riches that came up to Yucatan, what part of that would have been trying to get a settlement going? How could England knowingly set up something like that? It was clandestine. And part of it is understanding and recognizing that is a part of our history, the good, the bad, and the ugly. Enslavement, happened here, and it was terrible. We have more and more as people are going through our archives. We're getting access to documents. You're finding the stories of how terribly people were treated. Our forefathers, our enslaved ancestors. Common sense would tell us that many of them chose to run through those bushes and forests and run across to the Petén area, run up north to Mexico and perhaps further, and then run south as far as they could. Those are the, if we can do it today, why not then too? They did it, they moved through the bushes, and common sense would tell you, because the historical records are there, that we were not a pacifist, our ancestors were not pacifist people, our ancestors who were enslaved Africans were not pacifist people, they or were passive, not pacifist so much as passive people, because we have records of some of the riots that occurred. Part of what needs to happen, of course, is for us to tell the story. And I say again, here is a place where even without adding on, because those are all tributaries to this river that we're paddling down through, these tributaries are these stories that we can talk about, the dates, the facts, the cases, etc. But it is to say that we have a history. And I want to say and put on the record that that is the next chapter of my professional contribution, is to use my training, my expertise, my experience in trying to get our history documented, but documented through research and documented in a way so that the next generation of our leaders and managers will have Belize's history, not what we are picking from all over the place and talking about the, for example, the slave experience in a salt mine or in a cotton plantation or something like that, because that is not Belize's reality, but to talk about our story, our history, and all that matters to us. So this is part of what I think it is important to pay attention to. Yes, the Constitution is first and foremost, given the, as Sharon has said in the past, that we should be in an ongoing session because this is an emergency situation. We should maintain it, we should continue, we should keep the discussion going. And I also say that all of those 4 or 5 sessions that are planned for the diaspora, with those dates and those speakers, I think it is critically important to take from this discussion some of the questions and the positions that we are talking about. Put it on the record in each and every one of those spaces. I will be in the US for some of that time, and I am going to try to make it my business to register and to raise the question to those speakers who are available at the time I'm there. And I think that so that then I become, Mr. Brackett, the someone who is doing what needs to be done at that time.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
That said, Ms.
Thank you,
McKay,
and God bless.
I would like to ask one question. If they say we need a new identity, and we know for sure that was mentioned, and they say that we want to get away from our slave master, does that mean that Emancipation Day will be taken away also? That is the question.
May I suggest
Take off your mic too, Greg. Take off your mic too, Greg. Yeah. All right.
May I suggest that the way you respond to any version of a question like that about slave masters or about any of our past, the response is, are you talking about the enslavement that we are currently experiencing? And you speak to that.
Brilliant.
That is how we should take the question that is posed to us, because I hear it I hear it repeatedly, and I know it is one of the ways to undermine or to tear away, because that is part of what is happening. The way I perceive it is,
Psychology.
the, yes, of course, that is what is being used. So you have to
Play with our minds.
use it too. But I think part of the what is going on is a stripping away of our history, anything that is pre 1981. And I think it is critically important, which is why when I went on that show on Cut
Jules.
with Jules
Jules.
Vasquez in 2021, I raised, as soon as I sat down with him, and I challenged, and I will challenge any and everyone, including the continuation of that conversation from Evan X. Hyde about what he calls the myth of the Battle of St. George's Key, that no matter what you say, when people want to do what they want to do, they will continue to persist. So you simply have to counter that by providing the factual information that is available, and you can only provide what you have access to. As you get new information, you share new information and changes. But with Jules Vasquez asking if we should do away with the 10th of September, what is wrong with you, Jules? That is my question directly to him. Are you Belizean? Do you not know anything about your history? Because that is how I will take any question that makes absolutely no sense to come out of the mouth of a Belizean, for them to raise that. And I said it. Anybody who comes on this show to talk about it being that we should do away with it cannot be a Belizean.
Hold on
That
for
is
me.
how.
Thanks, Abigail. But the
Fifth
thing that we
columnist.
must let people know from our history, it was always commemorated and celebrated. It's well documented internationally. The very country Spain, whose armada was defeated, contributed back history of its defeat. The people from British Honduras, as Belize was, we have the original writings.
The
The
Bay
very
colonies.
diaries of Captain General Arturo O'Neill, Bocanegra, one of
And
them,
and
who
the
was on the
and the
Armada, his personal handwritten reports. And it's one of the most well documented histories. But you have to beg the question, why would anybody attack your history? And then I go on to say,
our history, not your, but our.
history, that
Yeah.
when it comes to the ICJ, if you look at certain things that were preparatory, that they had on, you know they want to exclude the Battle of St. George's Key, and you know the feature, because Black people, the decision to fight was taken here for women. Record will show that women were voting in Belize in 1765 on St. George's Key and at the public meeting, and 3 Blacks voted and carried the vote here. That's why our first emblem has Black people. And just so not forget, it's curious how somebody mentioned Pocono Boy early, right? And I did smile. Then I remember something else just now. By way of the history came back. You know, remember Abigail when we went to Flowers Bank, I think year before, so we couldn't get vehicle about 3 a.m. Somehow we get Mr. Thomas Greenwood. Wasn't that a blessing that when we reached Flowers Bank, he took the mic and he started to talk about how the Battle of St. George's Key, in terms of while he was at the Military Academy Sandhurst in England, that was being used as a case model internationally. And then there's a man in Belize who I will mention to you, Dr. Abigail, when he explained to me last year about things with the Pocono Boy and how the Spanish muskets, they had to be lighted a certain and they would blow up in the interior, and how the Pocono Boy stick was plentiful, you'd say endemic, easy material, and those would be set sharpened and set a certain way, and they would impale anybody. He said when the invaders would be coming, what they saw the rest who would come behind on the land side towards the west. They were frightened of the defense, the strategic defense, and it was powerful. But I want you to interview or have we usually say more talk with him. And I said, wow, the other thing that came out of our history, so now you read and you miss. 2 years ago when I read the history of the battle, the scouts from the first person who noticed, remember they made a trick, they may think sea Captain Moss may just idle the snorkel, but he was sunk in the depths. Then land Captain Barrow, he was at Balcars and so on. They expected a landed invasion. So they thought we were unprepared. The first scout who noticed and gave the warning was not just a fisherman, but a sea turtle fisherman. From all elders and my training in environmental law, we know that the sea turtle travel and by grace of God, they put tracking device. They could go over not just the sea, but the ocean and come back for the eggs hatch. But from our Creology or Belizean anecdotal history, the sea turtle fishermen were the most skillful of fishermen. I guess after that, the whale fishers. Then remember some years ago, we did a project thinking Dola, and Emerson's methodology was methodology or way for the ask the young people what they wanted, and we presented from what they said they needed to know more of the capital at St. George's Key, the capital at Belize Town, the capital at Belmopan, and even Caracol, which recorded
Ipu.
at the feet of Tikal, and as well had a woman ruler. So when you look at in our history, the lessons are there. But that thing with the Pocono boy, we have to show what Pocono boy good for. Seriously, that's a powerful part of our history in terms of
Yes.
Sharon,
defense,
And
material, food supply, even Pocono boy now will leave broke down prince, right? Thanks.
um, Sharon, apart of what you mentioned just now with St. George's Key being one of the original um, headquarters or town
Capital.
or capital,
Yes, capital.
Belize becoming our capital, and Belmopan becoming a capital. If you draw one line from Hamburger's Key, not Hamburger's Key, from St. George's Key through Belize City to Belmopan, it's straight north right there by Tipu, or Indian village in Akayo, that used to be the first capital of the major Mayan Empire. That was the first capital of the whole of British Honduras. That's
Yes.
historical.
so
I
Miss
have the records
McKay,
on that.
did you finish up, Miss McKay? Then I
I
will have a little contribution.
I
Go ahead. Go ahead.
one more to tie everything in, because all of what we are saying here brings us back to the fact that the Constitution is based on our history, and we have to recognize that the basis of our history, our past, is being attacked from several spaces. Because what happened with the stevedore situation in Belize, the waterfront workers, and the total lack of respect for the historical importance of that business, that particular business, and the fact that even the stevedores themselves did not know, understand, and put up any fight against what was going on. But the way the administration, the current administration, expressed their disdain for the black-skinned Belizeans with the heaviest curls, the tightest curls in their hair. You have to put the two things together, because we have very dark skin, but their curls are looser. So our black-skinned Belizeans with the tightest curls in their hair, they're the ones who were looked on. No attempts were made for relocation for their employment if they were interested in going down to Big Creek, where they could have reestablished the first tongue that was established out there. There are historical connections that could have been made for the waterfront workers and the history that we have. And that's just one. When you listen to Julius Espat speak of black-skinned, tight-curled Belizean, again, it is with disdain and caricature and all kinds of things. And to me, and he especially is the one who is speaking of making the current administration and the current PUP a party that returns to George Price, the emulation. And to me, those are some of the elements, those are some of the nuances or the psychological spaces where you drop these little pieces of these nuggets, these negative, Sharon, the story you told of what the one person thought it was a nugget, but it really was.
Yes.
And that's what is going on now. That they're telling you it is a nugget, but it isn't a nugget. And I think the more you pay attention, the more you raise a consciousness. That is part of what your discourse is doing. People bring their knowledge, their experience, they bring some of the cases like you just did. That was beautiful. And I personally think that if we were to take, Mr. Brackett, what you laid out there and encourage people to come to this site to pay attention to it, those who are in the paralegal classes, for example, in the month of September, I have to find a way to make this happen. Just as I think it is important for history teachers at the junior colleges and universities are open now, as of yesterday, 2 days ago. I think it is important to ask them, those teachers, to make an appeal to focus on a review of the Constitution, talk about it, invite in lawyers, etc. Because if we can get younger generations to become more appreciative or even more exposed, because it's the exposure and the knowledge that will create appreciation. If that can happen, then we can look forward to the questioning that needs to occur, because our young people will raise the questions. They're not afraid. And that, to me, should be a part of what is going on as well. Applying, we talked about as the National Creole Council and the approach to use. And because the National Creole Council is invested in safeguarding the historical foundations of this country, that is their duty.
Dr. Abigail, didn't we get a message that there was something disparaging that was said about the Creole Council right off?
It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter.
No, I'm just saying we don't repeat it, but I'm just saying the disdain. It's not even disguised, right?
And that is the point. So you could add that to chipping away to everything that is historical, that is pre-1981. So that is how you add that in the column of the facts, the statements that are uttered, they're out there. You can bring those things and say, why are you doing this? Why are you insisting that, and why are we pushing for a condition where people don't want to recognize their African ancestry? Why is it that we have our young people, young men and boys and men especially, that are being encouraged to kill themselves, and our young women to kill themselves in other ways as well? Now with the bad diet and the lack of health and hygiene, a number of things. And the whole idea of having that conversation, having the chook mouth, Sharon, having tea and talk, having our elders, grandparents, etc., talking and answering the question. That is what we are supposed to be doing in any and every space we're in. So you don't limit yourself to, this is a chook mouth. We're not drinking the tea around the table, but virtually we are. And this is what we are doing. And I think that if we become conscious that when we get together, 3 or 4 of you are having a conversation, that a chook mouth. And that is the process that we need to go along, and that will amplify. it will expand. And that's my position about how we can pay attention, we can hear what is being said, and don't ignore those little nuances. So thank you for raising that piece about the derision, the derisive approach to the National Creole Council, because that is to try to get support on their side to kick out the National Creole Council. That is what that is about. So that then you won't have people like yourself and myself or any of the others who are the members who are challenging what is going on, because we are becoming a pest. That's why that is being done. So we're actually irritating somebody, getting under their skin and doing what we're supposed to be doing. To me,
Mr.
that
Chair?
is important.
Sorry.
That is important, and I'll stop there. Thank you.
Okay. Mr. Chairman, could I say something in addition to what Ms. McKay just stipulated? I just want to one step further on what she was.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
Our problem in Belize, the dark-skinned people, and particularly, say Creoles and the Garifunas, them. In fact, I would say all the dark-skinned people in Belize. Everything that's going on.
You do realize that everybody, right? You do realize that everybody.
Right. Yes,
that's
but
why
there's a reason why I say that. But I don't want to conflict. I want to point out something specifically, which is why I said what I said. I preface what I said the way I said it. Most people in Belize, especially the lighter skinned Belizeans, them, whoever they are and whatever ethnicity they belong to, the bottom line is that the country's demography is being radically changed, rapidly being changed, and with an agenda afoot. They do not expect us as Creoles or dark-skinned people or black people to have anything to open your mouth and speak to those problems, because then they turn around and say, well, we want to be prejudiced against the light-skinned people them, or against they don't have nothing to say about what the light-skinned people and they do to us as Creoles, outnumber us. And like for example, when I go to Belize, I walk around the country and around the town, and I look for all the construction work where they go on. And I could barely find a black man involved in a trade or being given an opportunity to earn a living. But I could find people that I talk to in a Spanish on the job site there, and they don't bound at Belize, they don't live at Belize. So I then go and come every day from Melchor. But then could get a job, but the born Belizeans in Belize have to sit on home and suck their finger. They're not worthy of being able to earn their own keeps for their daily living. And that's part of one of the things that I'm concerned about. As I said, every time I come to the city or to the country, I go around from town to town, different villages, and I do my annual survey. And that's what I notice. Jobs are being hired by other people, but not by us. We are being shut out of the opportunity of survival and being able to make do or take care of the family needs and responsibilities. While in turn around I say, well, we're lazy and we don't want this. They don't want to hire the black people then. But that's another point for a different discussion.
I just want to say that is perhaps another element, another piece of information you can put in that column that we're cataloging for the many ways that we are being our history, our tradition, our cultures are being attacked under this administration. And that is the most recent call for everybody to have police records to get any jobs. Asking that, we know the conditions of all our weed smoking young men or the truancy, the schools, etc. We know what that will boil down to.
The government can't hire everybody.
Let me just say this to you, because that is where we have fallen short of our ancestral connections, because our great-grandparents and great-great-grandparents worked hard at their trades, skilled tradespeople, had their own, built their homes, had their farmlands or other property, left it and passed it on for the future generations. And what their children and their grandchildren and their great-grandchildren have done is being dismissive of those things, sell them off to any old who for a few bucks. So that is our responsibility that we have to recognize. So that is part of why I say one of the things we need to do is to get back to that, what Sharon Pitts and her family speak of as chook mouth. You have to go back to let these young people know that the shoemakers, the leather workers, the welders, the engineers, the mechanics, people who created and built things when there was very little, and all the trades. We have lost all the carpentry and cabinetry to go back to those things, and including the current areas of brick building, bricklaying, masonry, sheetrocking, etc., modern technology, to teach our young people to not continue to bewail and bemoan the fact that they can't get jobs, but to, in fact, teach them how to fish so that they can go out and do it for themselves and be their own bosses and generate their own wealth and not have to be under the thumb, because that is modern day slavery. That is a
Right.
part of how people are being controlled. So I say that to ask, because what you are saying is true. All of what you said is factual, not only true, but factual, observable every day. So how do you address something like that? You address it, like I say, with everything else. That's the negative. What is the positive that we can do to balance it? And the way we can do that is to make sure we begin to help everybody. And I'll tell you one story, one little story that will explain my point. I learned last week, Friday morning, of a situation where a 17-year-old from Punta Gorda, black skin, Creole Garifuna mixture, had come up to Belize City, was told that she was going to be given a tuition scholarship to go to sixth form. She wants to become a nurse. And SJC just began doing a nursing program. So this church said, we will give you the tuition scholarship, but we want you to do the least amount of subjects in school so that you can spend time in the church ministry, doing all the church things. We don't want school be your focus. We want church be your focus. And in addition to that, the place that they were housing her, the conditions under which she's in a place that has several rooms, but she was being made to sleep on the living room floor after everybody went to bed, which tells you of the enslavement. That's modern day slavery. But anyway, when it was time for the child to register, late registration, the last day, the scholarship was withdrawn for whatever purpose. She, late at night, around 11 o'clock, she had to call her grandmother in Punta Gorda to say, I have to leave the house I'm at. 17 years old, and somebody, the grandmother had to find to come and get the child, put her on a bus to send her back to PG, the cost. Now, you know, when the story is told to me on Friday, I said, we cannot have that. We cannot have that. We must do everything we possibly can to make sure this child goes to school, because you know what happens to girls who are out of school. We know the trajectory of her life can completely change. Now she wants to become a nurse. What is more honorable and needed in such a vocation? Yes, these are the skill areas we need. Now, of course, I'm looking all over the place to try to get the resources necessary for her, and I spent 2 days trying to do that. Now, while I'm waiting for feedback from everybody to pitch in some of the money, she has to get registered, because now she missed the registration, late registration and early registration. So she has to go as a transient student. That's what they call it UB. When you're not admitted, you could still go and do 5 classes over the 2-semester period. You can do that. Those credits can transfer into your program. So that's where I am working with her, because I say we need to help. You know, the Creole Council said for them motto that one okra full basket. Well, this is an okra. One, and we have to help. Just like we say, it take a village to raise a child. We need the resources, and if everybody pitch in a little bit, we could help them. And my attitude is the same around all these young girls that I do see pregnant out there, all of the little black girls. We need to do something. This is where Black Cross nurses want to reinstitute their headquarters and get going. Because we should be having those well baby clinics again and make sure that we can give them some porridge or some of the healthy food. Because we have a lot of fruits and food that goes to waste when the seasons are plentiful. We can do those things. There are things we can do, but that is that's the positive to balance off the negative. I share this little bit of story to say that we have to do, it's by our actions, it's how we engage, that we can make a difference in where we go, how we get the next generation of Black Belizeans to understand where they come from. And this afternoon, I had a conversation with a young Black man who is a teacher of music. And when he learned from a granduncle that he is related to Samuel Haynes, you should see the wonder in this young man's eyes and thinking about learning more. And he's a teacher. So do you know when he learns, his students will learn too, because he can pass on. That's what the Flowers Bank 14 and their descendants can do. They can pass on this information. We can try to reawaken our people, young and old, to say that you have something to contribute, you have something to fight for. That is the thing, that is what Sharon speaks of. We need more people, but the way you get engaged is when you become more aware. When you're aware, you learn how to appreciate. When you appreciate, you will defend. And that's how we want to go. Thank you.
Thank you. Just want to acknowledge the people that tune in. We have a Facebook user saying good night. And then we have another one, Facebook user again. Had a long commentary.
Yes, whoever not, just take your mic off. I'm glad you feel right. Okay.
Yeah. We have a commentary there that says, I recently had a heartfelt conversation with a young brother sent to jail for maintenance. A huge problem in Belize is that a large percent of Black men, first-time offenders, are being sent to jail for minor offenses and are being raped. This is a serious problem in Belize, and nobody is touching this subject. So that's another point.
It's so sad. Go ahead, Greg. Go ahead, Greg. Then you take off your mic when you finish. Go ahead.
Say this: when it comes to the Constitution and the government speaking about educating the Constitution, they are gross violators. They violated our rights when they brought in a terrorist. Violating our rights under the Freedom of Information Act. And they are treating our young men on the south side as slaves. They are breaking the laws that they are creating. They are doing localized movement of these young men, and they have created laws to stop these kinds of things. We must do these things, okay? Because I find them breaking the law created when it comes to human trafficking. You are trafficking our young men from their home to the prison, back and forth when you want to, up and down, and they have violated no law at all. When emergency, and I know if Mr. you will be the first, falls under the Emergency Powers Act, followed by the Emergency Regulation Act. So you must have regulations, like with COVID-19. If you stay out late, you can be picked up and charged if you are not wearing a mask. The question becomes, what crime have these young men committed that they are picked up with no reasonable articulable suspicion in violation of the Constitution to be trafficked by the police department back and forth from their houses? I wanted to get that across, Mr. Wade.
Yes,
You could
you
close off
know,
now, sir. We're at the end.
Miss McKay, you know, that's a very touching story, right? And I would hope and pray that the powers to be, you know, would get a hold of this story, right? And you know, take some action and put some of these monies that every week when they go to the house and acquire all these extraordinary amount of money for certain things to suit them, and the real issues they has been ignored from many years now, right? So, you know, it's a shame to see we talk about the stevedores, right? The system is not even paying attention to what they have done, right? They turn their backs from the stevedores, and who are these people? Who are these people you mentioned, right? The south side of Belize City, state of emergency. Who are these people? When, because that they say that they did a state of emergency in south side, bigger things is happening up north. Came from the Prime Minister's mouth, Johnny Briceño's mouth. Right away, he wanted $1 million. He got it, right? He didn't declare a state of emergency there in his neck of the woods. Why? Now, I say this to say that, you know, we talked about the Constitution gimmick that they are jamming down the. We all went at length, Miss Pitts, Miss McKay, Gregory, Leonard, at length. Underline item by item what these people had done so far in terms of want to change this constitution, right?
Mr. Wade, you have 2.5 minutes left, sir. 2 minutes and 23 seconds.
So I say this to say that we talk about ethnic cleansing in a different form, right? These people have their agenda. Pretty soon, there will be over 100,000 new Belizeans, right? Belizeans are being, you know, we are not here anymore. We are leaving this country, right? For greener pastures, right? So they know for a fact after they shoot through their agenda, who is going to say they don't want Belize to become a republic? The voting populace that they're going to have. I said this before, right? They're going to push through their agenda because, like I say, the over 100,000 that's going to be legalized in this country, they could give a hoot. They don't give a hoot if Belize become a republic or not, because that's where they come from. So their agenda is going to push through in terms of a vote, right? So they're trying all the trickery to push through that agenda. So the end result is that what I'm trying to say is that, you know, it's a different form of ethnic cleansing in Belize. And Leonard, you know, you could have your closing and
I
Greg.
passed my closing already, sir.
Okay, Ms. McKay, you want to say something real?
I have left just now.
a minute for you and
um,
Miss McKay. Then on the
late right
Sharon,
now, you
she
know?
got a minute. Yeah. Well, we started late too, you know.
No.
So go
We're
ahead, Miss McKay,
24
with a
2
minute.
hours and 24 minutes on the clock.
I want to
25 minutes
encourage
right now.
everybody to not to, especially Belizeans in the diaspora, tune into one of those sessions and ask the question, why? Why are we doing this? And what is wrong with the Constitution? Why do we have to write your Constitution? Is it not all our Constitution? I want to encourage Belizeans in the diaspora especially, push for your right to be included in Belize. The past administration failed miserably in giving the Belizeans in the diaspora the opportunity to be a full part of this country. And what this current administration has done after the COVID doors were open, all the ministers flooded the US, begging with their hands out, begging for remittances and other kinds of donation. But they don't want to include you in the decision making and the voting. And no, you gotta get involved and you gotta speak up. Make
So
sure
right
it's
on that
on the
one,
record because it is being recorded. Thank you.
Sharon, you want to give a minute before 1 minute? You got
It's kind of late.
your mic is off though. Your mic is off.
I just want to say thanks, no, for continuing and for the listeners, no, this wonderful thing that we do as kindred spirits and, love of God and by extension, love of people, love of Belizeans, love of humanity. And for
Thank you.
Belizeans, just this evening, a gentleman was saying that it was so difficult, and his daughter is a very special person, love Belize, a doctor in the US, We have so
Wow.
many people, whether they're cake decorating, whatever, homemakers. Point is, Belizeans have to, I'm suggesting, but I say have to start to claim on a birthright, have dual nationality. That I
Exactly.
think was one of the only good constitutional amendment I ever saw. And they take long, they don't have no special program, they try frustrate, but we have to patient. Start applying for that. And Mr. Golson had said from in the wrong 1990, Belizean rights would be the thing affecting generations of Belizeans to come. And the right to vote, you hear what Miss Abigail said about remittances, but Belizeans have contributed. We are only as strong as we are at home and abroad. You know, prop we up, we prop up, right?
Exactly.
And
Amen to that.
We have to, just like we welcome other people from other countries here, we have to. We get posted when we go abroad. We go to school abroad, thick thing. Want to help with education, a lot of different things. Sometimes just have to come and hang out, right? Participate in our 10th parade, Independence parade, whatever. But the children, future generations of Belizean, their birthright, don't take it for granted. Look like everybody want to come to Belize, everybody want Belize passport, and we must love and cherish and not take for granted that birthright. So I'm encouraging, right? Belizeans,
Thank you.
wherever, your children, your grandchildren, you get married to a non-Belizean, put it in, no? Sooner the better, right? And I know I said more because Krill said and everything.
Thank
good
you. On that note, you know,
but this is one way we will hold on to our beliefs. Thanks.
In that note, I want to say thank you guys. You know, thank you Sharon, thank you Miss McKay, thank you Leonard, thank you Gregory for another good program tonight and educational for the public. You know, so our viewers and listeners. Good night. Thank you. The only thing